and they wanted something that has national appeal. And I love sports, obviously. So
really?
I thought, what is it that people like? People like sports. People like underdog stories. What's the best underdog story? Villanova beating Georgetown in '85. There it is. So I tried to get an interview with Mitch Bonaguro, who was head coach at Siena at the time, but he was on Raleigh's staff. And I sent him an email, and he just replied with no. I asked if I can get an interview, and he just replied with no.
What's better
Mitch.
than no? Oh, no, Mitch, very good. No or nah? I got one time from that. Baxter Holmes from ESPN LA asked me that. He's like, nah. Like, both are very bad, but, like, at least I got back to you. Like, I'll take a no. I'd rather get that than nothing, you know?
It's bad. It's worse to be ignored entirely. Like, this guy isn't even worth the response.
Yes, definitely.
Delete.
Is.
All right.
That's terrible.
All right. So now that we've gotten to know Goz.
The Godfather, please.
The Godfather. Yes, sorry, Godfather, yes.
Yeah.
We're going to get to college football because, what do you know? You are a Heisman and College Football Hall of Fame voter.
Yes, I had to strap and hide the bodies to get that type of distinction. I don't know how it's happened, but that is true.
What is like a $5 application?
No, it's much more expensive than that.
No, that's a dream. If you ask me, my dream is to be working in college football. You must be living a dream working with Matt Woods.
Yes, every day.
Yes. All right.
Different kind of dreams.
We're going to go through the top 25. They were just released at 7 o'clock. Funny, we start at 7. So, anyone surprised that Alabama's number 1? No. Anyone surprised Miami's number 2?
A little.
A little bit?
It's a jump, but it's not crazy.
What about Clemson at number 3?
Yeah, I got some issues here with Clemson at 3 because
Don't talk about Syracuse.
Okay, I won't. Although I have to because they have a loss to Syracuse. Like, why is Clemson 3 and Wisconsin not in the top 4 yet? What else do they have to do?
This is the argument that I'm making, and I know I'm not part of the college football playoff committee, and they don't.
You're not?
No, I wish I was, and I don't understand how many undefeated teams are there in FBS right now.
4?
There are 4. There are Alabama, Wisconsin, Miami, and UCF. Seems to me you've got your playoff right there.
No.
What do you
can't
mean,
put
no?
UCF in there.
They've beaten 2 ranked teams so far
They play
this
in the
season.
American.
Does not matter where they play. They're undefeated.
I beg your pardon if you ever look at a ranking and notice all the SE teams littered in there.
Yeah, that's part of the problem.
Do you truly, honestly believe that Central Florida is better than any of those teams in the top 10? Any of them?
It doesn't matter what I believe.
But
What matters
what
is
you're doing, though. You're picking the top 4 teams in college football.
and
Like,
how do you
that's what it is.
tell a team in the 5th best conference?
They might be better
That's-
than Notre Dame.
Yeah, how do you tell a team in the 5th best conference? Because let's not, Tony and I, we've talked about this. The Big 12 is not a Power 5 conference. They're a joke.
Yeah, they don't have any defenses, right?
They're a joke. I look at American with Temple, with South Florida, with Memphis, with UCF as the 5th power conference.
You can look at it that way, but that's not the way that it's going to be
So
evaluated.
the fact that a team with 2 losses is going to get in over them, and we're not even talking about the Western Michigan scenario, because Western Michigan plays in the MAC, which is a bad conference. The American is not a bad conference. They're a good conference.
Am I missing, like, and actually Tony just brought this up, like, the American Conference overall, you're right. Like, it should be the 5th one because it's still in that mix of, are there good Power 5
It's
other
the Big
conferences?
East plus teams.
Sure. Yeah, definitely the Big East. But what's hurt that conference is that they, since they've separated, haven't gone out and had a marquee postseason New Year's Day against a top-tier opponent victory that I can remember. Now, maybe I'm missing one. Central Florida beat Baylor, but look where the Baylor program is now.
Well, the Baylor sports program included.
Right, it stinks. It's terrible. So I can't look at Central Florida and say, okay, if they go up against Clemson, we'll just toss this as an example, that they can hang within 14 points of Clemson because that conference now, at least to me, and maybe I missed something, hasn't proven to me that they can hang with those guys. Like, their non-conference isn't great.
I agree with that argument.
I see where you're coming from. I disagree simply because if the job is to rank these teams 1 through 25 as the 25 best, if you beat Navy who was in the top 25. If you beat Memphis, who's in the top 25, if you're ahead of South Florida, who was in the top 25 to end the season last year, was in the top 25 this year, had a potential Heisman winner, how do you discount those three teams and say this team that is undefeated in the same conference as these teams doesn't deserve a chance?
Those are fantastic wins, and I'm glad they did that because you can't change your opponents, but I can't look at Memphis. I can't look at whoever.
Memphis beat UCLA.
They did, but I can't look at those wins and say, okay, the win over them is better than a win like for Notre Dame over Georgia. Or for Auburn, I think they took down Mississippi State this season. Or any of those other wins. Like, it doesn't make Central Florida, and this is like kind of what you're going to get at. Central Florida isn't a worse team because they beat them. They're not. Like, that's who they have to play. You win every game, you're a good team, you beat everybody in front of you. But what the committee looks at, they say, shoot, I got to rank...
It's explicit, it's fine.
Yeah, I got to rank these teams, and I got to say, all right, look at their 6 wins, and look who they beat versus those guys. Like, I think what you might get at is here, and maybe this is where the frustration is that, okay, why is Central Florida not given the love that Boise State got? Because Boise State was in the freaking Mountain West whack, and they get all the way to a New Year's Six bowl game at the time. But Central Florida, who's had NFL players, like a starting quarterback in the NFL, a starting running back in the NFL, a starting wide receiver, nah, they're not that good. Like, they got a top 5 attendance in the country. It's like Ohio State, Central Florida, South Florida. They have all the makings to be, like, in here.
They're literally the second best team in the best football state.
which is kind of crazy when you think, like, a Florida team who's undefeated isn't in the top 10. I can give you top 10, maybe not top 5, though.
I think, and this is where I get the argument of conference winners in the playoff. Let the coaches who didn't win rank the teams. This is who I think is number 1. This is who I think is number 2 through 10, and then average them out. And then Alabama gets a first round bye. And then I'm guessing, if I had to guess what the rest of the coaches would say, is that Auburn would be number 2. Because
even with 2 losses?
Even with 2 losses, because they took down the number 1 team. They took it to Georgia. Absolutely took it. Miami struggled against Florida State. They struggled against Syracuse. And neither of those teams are any good, sorry.
Wait, hang on a second.
Miami doesn't... Miami being number 2 baffles me when you're making the argument Wisconsin hasn't played anyone. Miami might have played teams, but they haven't played them well. Okay, they've won against bad teams that they should beat. What's Miami's marquee win?
Notre Dame by like 35 points.
Notre Dame's not that good.
Well, they're ranked number 8 in the country. I mean, tell that to the playoff committee.
They lost one game to beat Georgia.
If you have the same
Notre Dame
argument,
lost to Georgia.
Thank you. They lost to Georgia.
By 1.
Miami, right.
Yeah.
But that, again, at home, also what I've been saying all year is, does it seem like Notre Dame plays any more than 2 road games every year? I feel like they're always at home. Every single week they're at home. It's the advantage of being independent. But what Goz was saying that I agree with, the Gozfather, excuse me, that's what that I agree with, is how can you have, this isn't him saying it, mind you, how do you have a team from Clemson who I can give them a hostile environment with being in the dome and losing to Syracuse? They were caught off guard. They were caught flat-footed.
Kelly Bryant clearly wasn't. Kelly Bryant
their
clearly
plan
wasn't.
worked perfectly.
It should have been.
It was one of the more entertaining games I've watched all year. But you have them sitting at number, what are they, 3?
3, yep.
And then, likewise, you have Oklahoma team that lost at home to Iowa State. So how are you going to sit there and tell me that those 2 losses aren't more detrimental to them to maybe less than great wins, even though it's their conference that they have to play for Wisconsin? Wisconsin didn't draw up who's in their division inside of the Big Ten. That's not their fault. They play who they're given.
If anything, I'm pretty sure Wisconsin's like, can we switch with Rutgers?
Yeah,
please?
sure.
Please?
But then that just makes chaos because you have half of the team, you have half of the Big Ten that should be playing in, this may upset you, but the American, and then you have half of it that should be belonging to Big Ten.
Like, if you flopped Clemson and Wisconsin right now, and you said, and this is like a really tough, I even struggle with this, like, can we weigh a bad loss so much that it sinks a ship? Like, and I love Syracuse, but the Syracuse loss in comparison to the other losses of those top 6 teams, and even if Alabama loses, like, Syracuse versus Iowa State versus 0 losses versus 0 losses versus 0 losses. Whoever lost to Syracuse in that 5 mix should be the 5th.
It stands out as a loss. It can't not grab your attention because Okay, maybe you could see that in a basketball score, but that's not what you're looking for in college football, especially a team coming off a national title. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, you lost Watson, but you still have the makings of a great team there. It's not like it's just going to turn over in Clemson.
Here's the argument that I'm going to make. If a player is 80 to 85% of your offensive production, i.e. Russell Wilson's not on the Seahawks, and the Seahawks lose, well, they didn't have Russell Wilson. Kelly Bryant is Clemson's offense. So to say that their best player wasn't playing and then had to play injured, which is worse than a healthy quarterback that is close, I can forgive them losing to Syracuse because Kelly Bryant was not Kelly Bryant.
Enough to put them below Wisconsin. Still?
If you ask me, I think Wisconsin should be number 3.
Okay.
I think it should be Alabama, Clemson.
So help me God if you say UCF.
I think it should be Central Florida, Alabama. No, I think it should be Alabama, Clemson, Wisconsin, Auburn.
You have to let Miami in there right now. They're undefeated in the ACC. They're undefeated until they lose, which I believe that they probably will. I think the U is back. I don't think it's back to its full potential, but everything is going in the right direction. This to me is surprising that they're this good this early, but I don't think they can sustain it. I don't think in the ACC they're going to be able to. Clemson should beat them.
Plus, not to mention Oklahoma at 4 is kind of a joke.
Why do you put Auburn at number 4?
Why do I put Auburn at number 4? Because they have the best win of the season over the number 1 team in the nation.
Yeah,
they absolutely killed the best team in the country.
But they did lose 2 games, and Georgia could be on pace to lose a second game if they get either Auburn or Alabama in the second. That's what's killing me here about the Auburn thing. And I think Auburn's good, but with 2 losses compared to 0, let's just do your theory, right? If you wanted to put Auburn at 4 this time next week, I might be able to hear that because they go out and they beat Georgia, they beat Alabama. Who's Miami beat in comparison to that? Who's Clemson beat? Who's Oklahoma? That's 2 really good wins, but. So what would happen if Auburn beat Alabama? Would they be 1 in your book with 2 losses?
No.
Okay.
No. I think number 1, I would have to say, would be Clemson. Number 2 would then be Auburn. 3 Wisconsin, 4 Alabama.
Still no love for Miami.
I'm not sold on Miami. The defense is there. If they didn't
sold at Miami in the beginning of the year.
No.
I was with you too on Miami too. Until I was just like you, man. You can actually go through my blogs at 1045 Team, and you can go through and actually for the first 3 weeks I'm like, Miami stinks, Miami's overrated. Because if you look back at the poll, this is mid-October, and I know you know this, but 3 games get rained out. Then they beat Georgia Southern, Bethune-Cookman, Duke, and they're the 15th best team in the country. I'm sitting there thinking hang on a second, Bethune-Cookman, whoever the other 2 random-ass schools I said. And somehow Miami, who was 7-6 last season, is the top 15 team in the country. Do they have a good quarter? What did I miss? And I was just like you, and I'm
They didn't know who the quarterback was until 2 weeks before the season.
Right, but now,
they were really close to starting crooked teeth N'Kosi Perry.
I can't deny him now. They're 10-0. They're going to probably be 11-0 this week. Now they're good. They're good now. Maybe they beat Syracuse. I'm biased, but I don't know.
Like I said, I think they're coming back. I don't think they're the team we think that everyone seems to think they are.
Yeah.
The same thing could be said with Georgia. When they took the number 1 ranking, I knew they were going to be good, but number 1 good, that's a stretch. I mean, we're talking about an Alabama team that does nothing but win consistently. I mean, you're talking about a Clemson team that's still strong. I don't know.
I think the trick or the thing that's tripping people up, in my opinion, and I feel like I can see right through it, is Notre Dame. I feel like Notre Dame is so weak that Alabama would beat them, Miami would beat them, Clemson would beat them, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Auburn, Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State. I bet Iowa would beat Notre Dame.
Well, I don't know.
I don't think any
At
team.
home, maybe.
I don't think Notre Dame belongs in the top 10. Definitely not the top 10. I don't think they're that good. I'm not impressed by Notre Dame at all.
What if they beat Stanford this week?
I'm not impressed with Stanford. I'm impressed with Bryce Love, not Stanford.
Man, that's tough. And you guys brought this up at the start of the podcast. To be independent and go 10-2, and your 2 losses on the season are to a 1-loss Georgia and an undefeated Miami. That's insane. That's it. That's all they lost to.
Yeah, because the other teams they play are UMass, Eastern Washington,
Navy, Michigan
North
State.
Dakota.
Notre Dame's always going to get more love than they deserve. I get that. But
It's because of the prestige. We talk about it
we
pretty
talk
much
about it.
every week. It's because they are Notre Dame. And Penn State
Well,
gets...
we got to